Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I wanted to jump on this Saturday and discuss for a few minutes. I've gotten a lot of questions recently, and there have been some ongoing conversations in the Systems Academy Telegram channel about coding for price action. And there are a lot to be fair, there are a lot of students in Systems Academy who are developing their own tools that they want to use in their research process. And there have been some questions about which language to choose. In most cases, the language is platform specific, so that they come together. But in other cases, there are different goals, and so there's a good place to begin is to quickly define why you're coding. So if you're developing code for price action in order to deploy discretionary systems, the first question is whether at any point you intend to run those systems fully automated. If you're going to run fully automated systems, you have certain languages and platforms which are more conducive. Hold on. Atomic Rage is asking whether it's live, and hopefully there's no AI that can fake the fact that this is live. So just yeah, there we have it. Oh goodness, Brad is here. You should join us if you have a moment. That'll be wonderful. So the reason for coding is to so first back up a second. If you're developing code for fully automated systems, something like PineScript, which is where I started, is not really going to be conducive to deploying a fully automated system because it just doesn't have the infrastructure surrounding it to do that. It's an amazing resource for quickly articulating ideas, conducting research, research to a certain extent. There's some limitations there we can talk about, but the larger idea is that if you want to have a fully automated system at some point in the future, it may not be worth spending the time to learn PineScript and deploy systems, deploy code there. It might be more worthwhile to look at something like NinjaTrader or Sierra Charts, or even Python if you're comfortable with that, because they are more conducive to the redundancies that you would need in order to run something fully automated. PineScript and TradingView just does not have that infrastructure surrounding it, at least right now. But that said, I don't consider myself a developer. I'm more of a builder. I build most of the things in my apartment, like the furniture in my apartment. I got renovated my apartment by myself. I like to build things. And so for me, learning to code was an exercise in articulating the ideas that I thought were most important to myself so that I could validate them, on my own rather than having to just take someone's word for it. Similar to the process that I think Ali went through. And as a result, I was able to get a lot of traction very quickly by starting in PineScript. And I started, as many of you probably know, by simply translating Ali's Breakout Paint Bar, which is one of the tools that we use in both PTM and Systems Academy. And that was an amazing exercise because he had published it uh, only in the breakout white paper, and then for Systems Academy students, and it was only in the and PTM students, and it was only in the easy language format. So I went through and translated it into Pine, which has a lot of different conventions and some significant advantages in some respects, which we will get into in subsequent episodes in the series. But the process of doing that was revelatory because prior to that, I had tried to code and I had ended up, for lack of a better term, creating noodle soup, right? Like just generating these things that were entirely curve fit to what I wanted the indicator to show me rather than helping me better understand something that I wanted to research. So I was forcing the indicator to show me something I thought should be true rather than using the code to reveal something to me which I didn't yet fully understand. And that's really where I think the great value in coding after you've decided whether or not you want to run a fully automated system or you want to use it for discretionary, systematic discretionary trading, and just to support you in that. Once you've determined that, then the next thing is to determine, why you are coding to begin with. We have so Charles asked whether we're able to translate the paint bars into NinjaTrader. There are students in our community, the Systems Academy community, who have translated it into NinjaTrader as well, and so I believe that's available in the code archive within Systems Academy. Let me just bring up my whiteboard real quick. I'm going to share my screen because we're going to start. Select the window. There we go. All right. And let me just make sure. Hold on. Great. I'm going to overlay like this. All right. So let's start here. Why code? So anyone here, do you have any ideas about why we would want to code to begin with? What is the reason for going through the process of, if you know how to code, great. If you don't know how to code and you're considering it, why subject yourself to the process of learning various language conventions, struggling through making it work, or going back and retooling things as they don't work exactly as you intended them to? What's the reason for doing any of this? For me, it was so Charles says to reduce the mental load, right? And focus more. That is one of the primary reasons, right? So there's a few reasons why, and that is certainly one of them. So Kademius says that they translated Ali's paint bar to their software's trading language. Yes, once you have, so if you work in a different trading language for whatever platform you're on, and you do participate in PTM or Systems Academy, retranslating or not even looking, perhaps you use PineScript, not even looking at the translation that I did and just going through the process of translating it yourself as the learning goal, or as the process of learning PineScript, is an incredibly valuable process. Stella says that you have to be able to clearly define and articulate the objective of the code. Exactly. And so I would say that is primary. So prior to supporting and reducing the mental load, that has to be the case, because the only time that you would want to trade on the code that you've written is once you've validated that it is showing you something which provides something statistically significant for you to actually execute on, right? And so you start by Y code, hold on. I lost my cursor. There's the cursor. Okay. To articulate your ideas and validate whether they are statistically significant, right? And this has two subparts. This means that you have to be able to use that code to conduct research. Apologize for the abhorrent spelling there. We'll just forgive and move on rather than try to erase that extra A. Okay, so conduct research and then apply apply findings to subsequent code development. Oh, goodness. Code dev. All right. Yeah, and so code will not be as biased as it will not be biased as a trader can be, right? It will only show you what you've told it to show you. Um, Samsara says for automated backtesting, that is true. You can do automated backtesting once you have robust code, but even the most accomplished developers, we had a student in, I had a student in Systems Academy this year who was a phenomenal developer. I mean, he was finishing his degree at Georgia Tech, which is obviously preeminent computer science department. And even after doing all of his code development, he went back to study everything manually, right? So the automated backtesting is valid only to a certain extent that you can get a general sense of what the code is showing you. The real ability to capitalize on the nuance of the market and the nuance of your ideas and understanding is in the manual backtesting and really understanding and we've talked about this in other streams, but understanding the nuances of the context that surround each of the phenomena that you're capturing data on, whether it's a signal, because you can conduct research based on code that you write that is not identifying a single signal, but rather a context phenomenon. So in this 3-part series, the next episode, in the next part, we're going to develop a study and some code to study EMA behavior or price action behavior around the EMA. And so it'll start with the EMA and expand on. And so we'll use some tools to develop that code, and I'll share it with you all in PineScript because we can do that fast here together. And then once we have that, we'll talk about how you would use that to conduct a study to better understand behavior of bars around the EMA, right? So it'll be a quick thing to do and just show you how you would want to think about coding for price action. It's not going to be a revolutionary piece of code. It's going to be very, very simple. But what we're going to do is just show how you can start with an idea about something that you want to better understand, and then write the code to give you the data to account for what you believe to be true, and then what you actually find to be true based on your empirical studies. So why code? We want to articulate our ideas and validate whether they're statistically significant, right? The reason why this works in code is because, as Yotze said, the code's only going to do what we tell it to do, which means it's functionally like a baby. If you can explain your ideas, I don't know if any of you have seen the series on. I'm not sure who produces it, but it's the where they have like the 5 or 4 different degrees of explanation. So they'll. One of my favorites is when they explain music theory to a child, a teen, and then like a professional, and the person who they're explaining to for the professional is Herbie Hancock. So they're explaining to, and I think it's I forgot his name. He's a savant, a music savant who's explaining to Herbie Hancock, and they just start geeking out. But prior to that, he's explaining it to a 5-year-old, and totally different way of explaining it. And that's more akin to what we do with code. And especially like, and in the third part of the series, we're going to talk about using AI to not develop code, but to better understand best practices in code development. And so the next part, we're going to discuss a small example code development session, and then third, we're going to talk about how to better understand the whole process using something like ChatGPT or Claude. I don't think that they're necessarily the best thing for actually writing the code, but for understanding first principles and options for how to articulate an idea, they can be very helpful. So the if we have code that we've used to extract data from the market, and we are now confident that there's something statistically significant that that data is telling us about our understanding of price action, and it correlates with something that we enjoy or that we find meaningful in price action. Say like it's a reversal and follow through. If you're trading excess, if you're trading big bars, if you're fading major trend reversals or third legs, anticipating trend reversals, things like this. So you could collect data on a variety of different things. Once you have that idea that you want to better understand and you want to have empirical data on it, using code to extract that data and organize a research study and then validate for yourself how you should be thinking about this is probably, it has been for me, the most valuable way of using the code that I write. I certainly use signals, but sometimes like it, and I actually prefer using signals when I'm tired. I'll lean on them more, but often I will trade without signals because I've been studying my signals for quite a long time. I'll have signals on in the background, and I have auditory alerts, audio alerts, which will generate. And so I know if signals are generating, but I don't necessarily always look at a chart with signals on it for the reason that I've studied all the signals that I've written code for hundreds of hours. So there I can recognize whether a bar is generating a signal or not, um, because I've studied the underlying principles which the code is using to generate those signals, and I can tell whether or not they're appearing to begin with. There's a few subtleties, and typically I will still draw measured moves, and I should say that we have someone in PTM who is probably the most creative coder in PineScript I've ever seen, and he's done a phenomenal series of pieces of PineScript code that rely heavily on measured move projections of a variety of different inputs. And the studies that he's put together and the way that he uses those to trade live is incredibly interesting. And so in that case, something like that, where you're actually calculating measured moves and which you're using to trade and generate your projections for targets and stops and all of that, that can be a very useful tool, actual real-time trading tool, rather than only a research and data collection tool. So after you answer why code, the next question is, where do I start? And the unfortunate thing about learning how to code, and the reason why I think I had more success than not, is because I didn't start with a coding program, coding tutorials, going to read some books on code. Um, I immediately started to code my own ideas, or what I thought I should be capturing information on. It turned out that it wasn't the way I should be doing it, so I learned something there. But the subsequent process of translating Ali's code was transformational. Um, it instills best practices for handling signals across modules, for uh, using some of the kind of baseline conventions for filters, not filters, well, filters within the code, but and they also translate to general price action filters, but how to handle them, how to apply them, how to using integers rather than booleans, things like that, and we can talk more about that later. But the most important thing, where do I start, is with something practical. If you're taking direction from someone who is leading a course or reading from a book or something which is static and impersonal, you're not going to be inspired to stick with it and figure out why things aren't working. But if you're executing, if you're following through on something that you want to better understand, um, then you're going to be able to sustain that motivation to push through uh, the inevitable difficulties that you'll run into. And by the end of it, you'll have something which is not, you'll have working code, which is valuable in itself, but you will have also gone through the process of teaching yourself how to make something valuable for the thing that you want to solve, the problem that you want to solve, or the thing you want to better understand. And that's, there's no way to reproduce that by just going and signing up for a course. Um, when you want to deploy a system live on AWS or something like that, and you just need to learn, the AWS conventions, which I probably should have done before I deployed the context analysis dashboard to AWS because that was a very painful learning process. But things like that, where it's not creative, you're arguably not creative. Where it's more just understanding the infrastructure and the requirements for getting something to work with all of the networking and backend systems. That's the kind of thing where you can go and learn from someone who's teaching a program. When you're trying to articulate something that is very personal and creative, it's going to be much more valuable in the long run to spend the time to work through it by yourself or with a group of other people who are you know like-minded. If you have a group of price action traders, who would be willing to work with you on it and just start working out some ideas, then it would have a similar effect. Just trying to get through something that's difficult and creative together. So start with something practical, work through it, and then once you have that, and I would say don't focus on signals. Don't you know you all may have systems which you're trading currently, but I don't suggest that people start by collecting data or by coding for a specific system. I think it's far more valuable to code for something that you want to collect data on that is more context based because it doesn't coding for a signal assumes that you already have all of the data to support the trading of that signal in a particular way versus something which is more context based. So that's why I'm going to do the EMA tutorial in our next session because it is just a very practical study that anyone can walk away with the code for to just conduct a study on price behavior around the EMA, right? And then you can fill in all of the secondary things that you would want to do because I mean that just gives you the framework for conducting 20 different studies, right? That is not a study in itself. That gives you a tool to conduct studies on price behavior around the EMA, but there's many different studies you may want to develop in order to do that. So that's where I would go with it. So starting with Y coding and then starting with something practical, which we are going to do in our next session. So if you all don't have any questions, I will stop sharing here. And we'll probably get to the second session on Wednesday, I believe. And I'll see you all then. Any questions before we wrap up? All right. Then have a great weekend, everyone. We'll see you next week. Boy, this week. It's Monday already. Okay. I'll see you on Wednesday. Have a great week.